Hi, I'm Dr. Dave Janda. Welcome back to Operation Freedom Briefings and happy holidays. The goal of these briefings and my weekly radio show Operation Freedom is to provide you information the bought-off, lamestream, fake media is not going to present and is not going to touch. You can join us at davejanda.com. We're there 24/7. We have a public side, a free side. We also have the subscription side, 30 cents a day. I believe one of the biggest bangs for the buck in all of the internet. We also have our radio show that you can stream live every Sunday, 2 to 5 Eastern. Go to davejanda.com, hit the upper right-hand corner, and hit the Listen Live button. Great analysis, great guests. We're there every Sunday, 2 to 5. Today, I'd like to focus on what's happening financially. There's a war between Donald Trump and the globalist terrorists represented by the Federal Reserve. Look, a little background and foundation. You probably know this, but I bet you your neighbors don't, and the vast majority of your family doesn't. The Federal Reserve is not a part of the executive, legislative, or judicial branches of the United States government. It's an independent entity. It's great marketing. Federal Reserve, like Federal Express, not associated with the federal government. The Federal Reserve is a group of independent bankers that are only looking out for the interests of banksters, not the American public, not our country. A great book, one of our guests on Operation Freedom on the davejanda.com platform, on our subscription platform, is G. Edward Griffin. He wrote a fantastic book, mandatory reading, The Creature from Jekyll Island. It talks about the creation of the Federal Reserve in 1913 and how the money supply, the creation of the money supply was handed over to the globalist syndicate, the Rothschild-Rockefeller axis. These are the sinister players that have destroyed our country, that have created bubble after bubble, that have created financial ruin around our country, wreaked havoc and chaos. To us, that's horrible. To them, it's just another day at the office, because out of this chaos, they always get more power, more control, and more financial resources. Trump is in a death match with the globalists, and in particular, the Federal Reserve. Let me give you an example. Trump, in my lifetime, is probably the president who has publicly gone after the Federal Reserve like no other president, again, in my lifetime. Now, Reagan pointed the finger at the Fed. Kennedy pointed the finger at the Fed. Trump is in daily warfare with the Fed. Go back to October 10th. This is when he really went cosmic with it, if you will, really went overt with it. Trump blames Powell, the chairman of the Federal Reserve. Quote, "I think the Fed has gone crazy," end quote. October 15th, 2018. Quote, "My biggest threat is the Fed," end quote. Trump citing aggressive rate hikes. October 23rd, 2018. Trump escalates his attack on Powell. Quote, "Every time we do something great, he raises interest rates." November 23rd. It's interesting, on that day, the Federal Reserve issued a cautionary note about risk to financial stability, saying trade tensions, geopolitical uncertainty, and a buildup in corporate debt among firms with weak balance sheets pose strong threats. And then on November 27th, President Trump has come out and said, "The Federal Reserve is a much bigger problem than China," end quote. Now look, up until that point, he was talking about how horrible China is, how they steal from us, they rip us off. And now he tells the American public, the Fed is worse than China. President Trump has been tweeting about Powell, the chairman, about the Federal Reserve, about how they're trying to ruin the economy, bring down the stock market. In fact, Trump has known from the very beginning, I believe, that the financial system was based on vapor. Look at when President Trump ran for office. He was talking about how the jobs numbers are fraudulent, the government data is fraudulent, the stock market is a huge bubble being supported by the globalists pumping money into it, creating this Ponzi scheme. He knew our country was in debt to the tune of $21 trillion when he was elected. But remember that meeting in the Oval Office with Obama. Prior to that, there was some other meeting that occurred, the players of which were never mentioned in public. I believe it was at that meeting with Obama, Trump, and whoever these other players were, mainly financial. I believe President Trump was told not only about the $21 trillion in debt, which he was aware of, and I believe he had a plan. I believe he had a plan coming in. He said, well, we can grow out of this. We can possibly default part here, and we can devalue the dollar a bit, and we can kind of grow our way out of it. But at that meeting, I believe he was confronted with another set of facts. We've outlined on our show, and Greg Hunter has with his on USA Watchdog through Dr. Mark Skidmore and Catherine Austin Fitts, that in addition, between 1998 and 2015, there's $21 trillion that's unaccounted for just in the Department of Defense and Housing and Urban Development. So we were $21 trillion in debt, and all of a sudden Trump is confronted with at least another $21 trillion that's missing, and probably tens of trillions beyond that that we're just not aware of. And I believe he realized, this is not something we can grow out of. This is not something we can depreciate the dollar out of. Donald Trump, remember, is adept at dealing with bankruptcy situations, which is one of the reasons why I believe he's there. And I believe he said, okay, I have to take ownership of the stock market. I have to use their own tools to blow this thing up higher so that when it falls, it doesn't fall quite as far. And I have to buy some time so I can deal with our creditors, China and the like, and I can deal with our creditors and try to make it so that when the system unravels, that millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people are not going to be devastated. Yes, there's going to be some tough times, but I have to make it so they're not devastated. And I believe that's what President Trump has been doing the first 2 years. I believe he's been negotiating about our debt. I believe he's been trying to shore up the system so that when it does come down, that millions, tens, hundreds of millions of people are not, as I said, ruined. But he's also, and he started on this in October, as I mentioned to you in his quotes, he's been pointing the finger at the people that were responsible for this, and that is the Fed. And the Fed is trying to point the finger at him, saying, oh, it's all Trump's doing. And Trump is saying, folks, look, it's the Federal Reserve. It's this group of private, independent bankers that's been screwing you and your relatives and our country for at least 105 years. They are the ones to blame. And then it came out that this weekend, Trump is considering firing the Fed chairman, Powell. Well, that might be a bit of theater, because then again, it points the finger at the Fed as being the problem. Now, all these pundits in the bought-off lamestream fake media are saying, oh, that's never happened before, this trash talk. Really? I want to take it back to something that Ron Paul brought up when President Lyndon Johnson was in power. He summoned then Fed Chairman William McChesney Martin to President Johnson's ranch in the Hill Country outside of Austin. Johnson, at that meeting, shoved the Fed chairman against the wall. He physically assaulted, this is Ron Paul, physically assaulting the Fed chairman is probably a greater threat to the Federal Reserve independence than questioning the Fed's policies on Twitter. So when folks say no one's ever treated a Fed chairman, really? Come on. But Trump is doing it in public, not private. And that's the key. And then this article came out on Zero Hedge from this weekend, authored by Michael Schneider. Is the Fed actually trying to cause a stock market crash? Quote, all the economic numbers tell us that the economy is slowing down, and Fed Chair Jerome Powell even admitted that the economic conditions are softening. But the Federal Reserve raised interest rates anyway just this past week. As one top economist put it, raising rates as we head into an economic downturn is, quote, economic malpractice, end quote. They know that higher rates will slow down the economy even more, but it isn't as if the Fed was divided on this move. In fact, it was a unanimous vote to raise rates. They clearly have an agenda, and that agenda is definitely not about helping the American people. Look, bottom line. The stock market, the financial markets, have been constructed, if you will, by the globalists over time to come down. And what Trump has done for the past 2 years is bought time to try to shore up the underlying instability in the system so that millions of Americans are not devastated by this. When it does crash, and it will crash, and we've seen the stock market come down from 26,000 down to 22,000 and undoubtedly lower. President Trump has set the table so that the American public knows who's to blame. And that's the globalists and their tentacle, the Federal Reserve. I believe his ultimate goal is when the crash occurs and a reset occurs, part of that reset is going to be a neutering of the Federal Reserve and the globalists. Donald Trump is in the process of trying to make lemonade out of lemons. He was handed a system that was destined to collapse. He is in the process of trying to shore up what he can so that when it does collapse, the collapse is muted. And also when the collapse occurs, the appropriate people who are responsible for this can be blamed. It's not about trade negotiations with China. It's all about the globalist construct of the financial system and the debt-ridden core of it. We discuss in great depth this past Sunday on our Operation Freedom show with Bill Holter. And I am going to have that link in the notes section here so you have access to that link so you can hear that interview. Normally it's protected under password on our podcast, but that interview I'm going to open up for you so you can get a hint of what we do on our show and what we do on our platform, on our subscription platform with DaveJanda.com. We have our WTF geopolitical analysis show. We have our Insider Insight show with insider insights and interviews with people that you're never going to see in the bought-off lamestream fake media. We have a Department of Advanced Research show. Our subscribers have access to the podcast, not just from last week, but from every week back to the inception of Operation Freedom of October of 2010. I'd like to thank you for your time today. I'd like to thank you for joining me. I hope you will join us on the free side at DaveJanda.com, and also $9 a month. You can sign up for a month and get rid of it if you don't like it, but the information you get, you're not going to get from other sources. Hope you'll try that as well. And again, I thank you for joining us here on our platform on YouTube. As we sign off every segment, this is Dave Janda signing off. Dream big and dare to fail. Thank you for your time today.